What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Oh my goodness, that's what I'm talking about. Get your Friday groove going on. We have made it. Let's do it and get through it so we can get to the weekend. This is Michael, by the way, in the wee hours of the night on the graveyard shift. And like I said before, happy Friday. The only thing that could be better is if it was a payday Friday. And I can tell you right now, in the wee hours of the night, I just checked my checking account, and it's definitely not a payday Friday. my checking account, I pulled up my checking account, and it's got a little icon on it. It's just shaking its head going, no payday today. But anyhow, it's Friday nonetheless, and it's time to get to it. That's what I'm talking about. So, okay, the answer to the previous trivia question was fallout shelters, also known as backyard bunkers or nuclear bomb shelters. Either one of these answers were completely acceptable. And this is just fascinating stuff to me because I'm a geek like that to research. And I really enjoyed researching this topic. And this kind of stuff really happened. That's what fascinates me the most. So by 1961, check this out, Cold War tensions were so high. President John F. Kennedy, speaking on civil defense issues, advises American families to build bomb shelters to protect them from atomic fallout in the event of nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union. This was a real concern in 1961 after John F. Kennedy had gotten elected. Heading into the 60s and not long after being elected, President Kennedy was reported as a series of nail-biting face-off with the Soviets. So he recommended a fallout shelter for all Americans and advised citizens to stock them as rapidly as possible, his own words, in his speech to the American public on October 6th of that year. That was the focus of the trivia question. He needed some hype, as it were, as it was documented in history as, around his civil defense platform, which was part of his agenda and his whole cabinet agenda, right? And to counteract the revitalization of what was going on at the time in the country, which was the American peace movement, which was just getting geared up for that entire decade. This was the make love, not war, peacenik type of an aspect of things for the 60s, right? So the media, of course, amplified this, as they usually do, this theme of President Kennedy's speech, as well as the fear. Everything got thrown into the mix. Life magazine, very shortly after, even ran a feature story headlined "The Drive for Mass Shelters." I've included a copy of that actual article in some other Life magazines. And these included like how-to booklets to instruct people on how to start digging around in their backyard and build their own shelters, for goodness sake. Suddenly, a nuclear bomb shelter was a must-have for every household heading into the 60s, and grocery store items ran completely out of stock for all kinds of perishable items that were considered necessity for these environments. You can imagine there was a panic. There's a panic to the whole thing. His speech caused much of this, because when the president speaks, people listen, quite frankly. And this was a real concern with Cold War tensions in 1961. In the aftermath of Kennedy's remarks, Congress actually voted to appropriate $160 million, folks, to locate, mark, and stock fallout shelters in existing public and private buildings. That might not seem like a lot of money in today's day and age, but in 1961, $169 million was quite a pretty penny. So Congress was even getting ready for this. That's how serious people were taking this back. This actually happened in this country. The couple of geek factoids about backyard bunkers and fallout shelters and the recommendation by President Kennedy at the time for everybody to have one. The whole issue of building backyard bunkers was exasperated less than a year later when what was known as the Cuban Missile Crisis erupted over the USSR's placement of nuclear missiles in Cuba, which equated to a tenth, if you'll recall from your high school history class, and that famous Oliver Stone movie, and a couple bunches of books that's been written on the matter. This equated to a tense 13-day crisis standoff, which sent people into overdrive to not only build these bunkers, but to finish them in a hurry. So that whole issue just amped things up even more as far as backyard bunkers, fallout shelters go. I found in my research that a pair of publicity-savvy newlyweds actually spent their honeymoon inside of a shelter for 14 days in 1961. So people, even in situations like this, people were making the best out of it. Now, can you imagine any president? Here's my question for this whole thing. Can you imagine any president in 2022, or even the last 5 years for that matter, advising the American public to build atomic shelters in their backyard? Can you imagine in today's day and age what kind of panic that would cause? I can't fathom the thought, quite frankly. Can you imagine being a manufacturer of these atomic shelters and cashing in on this in 1960, 1961, and the few years that followed? I imagine people were just coming up with all kinds of business niches as far as bunkers and shelters go. So there's a lot of different questions. So many questions. Too many questions to consider. I found too many of these really cool bunkers to put in here. I found one that was built in Vegas that included an underground pool. You could basically live in this bunker forever if you wanted to. Some a rich person in Vegas built it. It was at one point on sale for $18 million, renovated. You could buy it if you wanted to. And so can you imagine, this is what I would be interested in, is finding some of these old style houses from the 60s that had these unique and even fancy, and maybe pump some money into these bunkers and kind of renovating them into like a playhouse or a man cave. Think about that. How cool would that be? That would be neat. Put a pool room up, little bar down there, little gaming area to get away. Neat reconstruction ideas. But I don't. I'm interested in if any of them are around in this local area. Houses from the 60s that have backyard bunkers and so forth. And I'd be really interested in picking the brain of some of people who lived through this era, who lived in a house with a bunker, what their bunkers were like, and just what the kind of the tension in the air was, and the inspiration to do that was back in that day. If anybody's out there, hit me up by all means. All right, folks, let's roll right into Friday. You'll see why I use that phrase with this trivia question, and get to the weekend with a brand new trivia question for October 7th. Here we go. This is pretty cool, folks. See if you can get this on this day. In 1913, Henry Ford's historic automobile factory in Highland Park, Michigan, is operated for the first time ever by assembling the famous Model T using this revolutionary industrial technique, which would subsequently cut the man hours required for manufacturing in half, from 12 and a half hours down to less than 6. Good luck, folks. Enjoy your Friday. Have a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend. Yeah. Put your hands together. Get up and dance, folks. I can see you out there. Thanks for all you do, folks. Love you guys. Peace out, baby.